My guest on this show is Archie Campbell. Archie is, I suppose, one of the best-known faces and characters on the television show Hee Haw.
Well, I don't know where I'm the best known. I've been very fortunate with that show, I'll tell you that. For a show that wasn't supposed to last but 3 weeks, according to the New York critics, it's done fairly well.
This will be, this season is the, what, 17th?
17th year, yeah.
Archie, aren't you one of the original members of the Hee Haw cast?
Oh, yes. In 1960, well, actually, we did it in 1969, you know. You remember David Hoy?
Yes.
You want a strange story? David Hoy was one of those guys that could predict the future and so forth. Well, I never did believe that stuff. You know, I'm a non-believer in that sort of thing. So one day he was visiting Chet, and Chet had been telling me about it.
Chet Atkins?
Chet Atkins. What a nice guy he was and so forth, and a clever man. And so he said, we're going to have lunch today. Come go lunch with us. So I went down, and David walked over. He was a great big guy and had a beard and very distinguished looking. And the first thing is he said, Archie Campbell. Said in April or May, said, you'll get a phone call, and it'll be a great opportunity. You'll accept it. It's a television show, and it'll be a big hit. And I said, oh, thank you very much. I'm sure glad to hear that, because I certainly need something, you know. And so I didn't, I forgot it. And then so help me, in April, I got the call, and in May I went. And I went to California to try out for the thing. You know, they wanted to talk to me. I was supposed to go for 3 days and to see if they liked me and I liked them. And so we got along just fine, you know. So I stayed there for 3 more weeks writing the show, you know. And Gordy Tapp and I sat there in the Sunset Marquee and wrote day and night. Wrote 12 shows. And we came back, and, of course, the show was, boom, a big success right off the bat. And one day I'm sitting out at the house in Brentwood. I lived in Brentwood then. And I asked Pudge, my wife, I said, where's that book? Well, I left out one thing. He sent me a book 2 weeks after I met him and his prediction. And in the book he said, to my good friend Archie Campbell, who does not believe my prediction. And I got the book to read that. Now, isn't that strange? Are you a believer in that sort of thing?
I have an open mind, Archie. I knew David Hoy very well, and he predicted many things. Sometimes he was wrong, and sometimes he was right.
Right, he sure did.
Archie, you were signed as both a performer and writer, weren't you?
Right. Well, that being I was not a writer, you know. Of course, I wrote my own material, have been for years and years, you know, but I was not really a writer. So immediately we're in the Screenwriters Guild, and I've been a member of that ever since, which is incidentally a great union. They really take care of their own people. But because I was on the show, I had to be a screenwriter, you know.
Do you still write the show?
Oh, yes.
How many writers do they have?
7. We had 2 when we started.
People on Hee Haw are allowed to depart from the prepared text, aren't they?
Yes. That's one of the best things about the show.
Now, I wondered if you wrote a joke and they didn't tell it the way you wrote it, if that bothered you.
No, absolutely not. If it's funny. But if they screw it up and it doesn't work, well, then that's bad. I have to tell them, and I said, no, don't do it that way. Do it like it's written, and they can't see it. Sometimes they can't see the funny parts, you know. But 9 times out of 10, a joke is good according to how you deliver it anyhow. And so many things I do, I'll do the joke, and then I'll have a double take, you know. And for a while, they didn't get that. I said, well, this joke's no good unless we get the double take, you know.
Archie, did you also help create some of the characters like Nurse Goodbody and the barbershop scene?
Yeah.
And
the judge.
And what about character like Roy Clark's
Strawberry?
No, I'm thinking of where he is the hotel clerk.
Oh, well, no, I don't think I did that. I write for it, but I didn't create the premise in the beginning. But I did create the judge, where I try people, you know, for everything. That's so easy to do. And then the doctor and the barbershop. And then I give definitions to words, which is another little segment I did. And a lot of things. And then a lot of things I agreed on the idea, too, you know. We've got it together and discussed, will this work? And I have always insisted that we create something that will last, you know. In case it's a hit, where does your material come from? For example, we had a Western scene for a while, and it cost a fortune and was no future to it. But you see that there's 9 million doctor jokes and funny situations, also for a judge. And the barbershop is flexible. You can do anything in a barbershop.
Archie is a comedian, a veteran of show business of how many years?
50. About 50 years. Well, we had a celebration at the Opry. I'd had 50 years in show business, 25 on the Grand Ole Opry. It was last year. So I've actually been in the business 50 years. I started before I got on the air even, you know. I did medicine shows and anything where I could make a buck.
Archie, this year, Rod Brasfield has been nominated for the Hall of Fame at the Country Music Association.
Well, I'll vote for him.
And you followed, as I recall, when Rod Brasfield died in
Right.
1958, they brought you in from Knoxville.
Right. Jack Stapp did.
To occupy the spot that he had formerly
Right.
had on the Opry. And you were quite different.
Yeah,
And
we're entirely different, but you know, he was a natural-born great comedian. I have to work for mine. I don't look the part. See, he could just stand up and look at you, you know, and get a laugh. And his delivery was perfect. He had a brother who was a great comedian too, you know.
So Uncle Sipe
Yeah.
used to work with Red Foley.
Right.
But what I'm trying to get across here is the problem you had with the people at the Opry who thought you should dress the part of the comedian.
Say that again.
You told me one time about the people at the Opry when you arrived. They expected
yeah.
you to wear the funny
The
clothes.
big breeches.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Art Divine did that. I did a few times, you know. I made up a little bit, and I saw, you know, I had an idea that if you could deliver the stuff and do the job as it should be done, that you didn't have to wear those clothes. So one night I came in, my Furlan Husky was always a snappy dresser, you know, then that shiny suit, what do you call it, mohair? He had a mohair suit, a white shirt, and a white tie. And Lord, I thought, what a handsome cat he is. So the next weekend, I bought a mohair suit, a white shirt, and a white tie, and I walked out. Just before I went on the stage, I said, where's your costume? I said, this is it. He said, you crazy? That'll never work. I said, well, I'm going to give it a go. So I used my best stuff, and it went great, you know. But, which proved my point, you know, you don't have to dress like a tramp unless you're doing that kind of thing, you know, and the situation calls for it. When you're doing a stand-up thing, you know, like at the Opry, I want them to see me as I am. Now, from Hee Haw, we dress for the parts we're doing, you know, like the judge and so forth. I wear an old hat. And the doctor, I have my glass over my head, you know, and all that sort of thing.
What's a surefire joke, if nothing else is working, that you'll switch to?
Well, golly, I don't know. I always do. I'll tell you something I can do if, you know, the audiences are not cold anymore. I mean, when you got it like I've had it lately, they know who you are before you walk on the stage. You're pre-sold. So I don't have that problem. I have had in the past, but once in a while, if they can't hear you good or some reason, I'll always do the spoonerisms, which is kind of cute. It's not that funny, but it's hard to do, so they like to see you do it. So I'll get on that sometime.
All right, since you opened that can of worms, let's explain spoonerisms.
Well, the derivation, of course, came from Dr. Spooner, who was a minister. Now, I got this from another minister, Hank Snow's son. He's the first guy that reminded me of this thing. He did a little bit of it, and so I rewrote it and all that sort of thing. But Dr. Spooner was a teacher, and he did it accidentally. Of course, everybody's done it. You've done it. Everybody has done a spoonerism. That's where you turn the syllables around, like Cinderella, Rendersella. You're liable to say that without thinking. Well, he did this a few times accidentally, and he got some laughs from his students, so he decided he would work it into a thing. But what he did, he would start out, and there's a lot of them in the books, instead of saying once upon a time, He'd say, "Once upon a while in a corn country there lived a beautiful girl. Her name was Rendersella." Well, what I did, I knew that the audience wouldn't pick up on it unless I did that first line, "once upon a time." See, that establishes in your mind that it's one of those stories.
Mm-hmm.
I turn the words around. The only ones that I turn around are the ones that are easy to do and are kind of funny, like when I got down to the part where she dropped her slipper. Well, it slopped her dripper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the real line in there is she lost her slipper. Would have been slost her lipper. But slopped her dripper is funnier somehow or another.
I heard the first one I ever heard from a gentleman that I know quite well. He was in the middle of the street at 2 o'clock in the morning where I was boarding. I was 18 and he was drunk. And he was reciting, "Starkle, starkle, little twink, who the heck are you think? I are not under the influence of Inker Hall, although some think'll peep I am."
Yeah. And another one is like, this is standard. Lady got to church late, and the usher had to go over and remove her from the seat, and he said, "Pardon me, Padam, but you have occupied the wrong pie. May I sew you to another sheet?"
We have established the fact that, well, Archie established the fact forever that he is one of the leading lights on the television show Hee Haw, and it's been a fascinating 17 years on Hee Haw. Archie, is from where people sit, it looks like a very happy family.
Oh, yeah.
Is it?
Oh, yes, it certainly is. You know, we get together twice a year, and everybody's getting to be better every year. You know, we are anxious to see each other and so forth, and the new stuff goes around, the new jokes. And in about 2 days, well, they're all repeating it, the same story, you know, to each other. So then we quit telling it again. But no, it's just great. It's just great. Everybody likes everybody else, and very few problems.
Archie, whose idea was it to populate Hee Haw with pretty girls? Now, I say that because Hee Haw, I think, was a spin-off of Laugh-In, or an attempt to do a country Laugh-In.
Well, that's exactly right.
Now, Laugh-In, however, was not populated with a lot of pretty girls. Most of the girls on there were comedians.
Mm-hmm.
But you've had some luscious ladies on Hee Haw.
Oh, yeah, we sure do. Well, I think that was probably John Aylesworth and Frank Pepiot's idea. When you think of Hee Haw as being a takeoff on Laugh-In, naturally all things are. In Hollywood, they're the worst in the world about that because they say, "This is going good, let's write one like that," you know, which I disagree with. But I think if you ought to come up with something new. And I disagreed with the name Hee Haw when it first started. I said, "Ooh, golly, no, not that." But I do agree with it now. And we had a great director, Bill Davis. But if you think that any show is a takeoff on another one, like Laugh-In, for example, goes a way, way back to what we call blackouts. And that was where you had the interlocutor in the center of the stage, and while a guy over on the left side was doing his act in a spotlight, an act on the other side was getting ready, setting up.
Are we talking about vaudeville?
Vaudeville, before television or anything. Television made blackouts simple. But then you go back to Ken Murray's blackouts, and Hell's a Poppin', all those shows. See, that was exactly Laugh-In. And then we come along, and we're exactly like Laugh-In, of course. Hee Haw is another Laugh-In, but you can't call any of them really original, except it's so far back that it's hard to do enough research to find out who did it first.
Hard to find a new joke, too, isn't it, Archie?
There are no new jokes, and there's no old ones. A new joke is one you haven't heard, and an old joke is one you've heard too much lately.
Arch, I have to wrap this up. Thank you very much.